internets, to a new episode of Views from the 616, the blackest MCU podcast in the multiverse, powered by For All Nerds, where we discuss everything in the MCU from the perspective of people of color. And it is I, one of your hosts, Tatiana King, aka Baft in America, aka the coldest winter soldier ever, aka Tesseract Thompson. And I'm joined by my bespectacled co-host.
Once again, back again, it's your boy DJ Benhameen, a.k.a. the Off-White Panther, a.k.a. We Was Kangs.
What? Oh, Kang. We was Kangs. Oh, my God. Yo. So, just to give you guys just a brief update, yes, we're back, kind of, sort of. I know everyone's like, wait, you guys told us you're going to be back on Monday. We are, but we decided to do something a little special for you because something occurred over the last couple of days, and some weird, I don't know what to call it, some I think Mercury's in micro braids or something like that. Like, the wildest thing just occurred. So, like, due to a series of misfortunate events involving our bestie with a Tessie, thank you, Loki, an alternate timeline was created where only DJ Benhameen was able to experience the first 2 episodes of Disney Plus Loki. You see, he is imbued with the glory of getting the episodes early.
As of episode 1, this man gets caught up very quickly. You know, Usher's caught up might apply right here because he quickly finds out pretty much everything that we have seen so far of his adventures and misadventures. Now, how this affects him going forward, it remains to be seen. Yeah. But he does have a lot of growth in a very short time. Now, is he this very same Loki? Not at all. And I think that would lead into one of our questions, or our big question of this video. Who is the real villain of Loki? Is it Loki?
Is it Loki?
Himself?
Okay. So we came up with a list, and Benhameen, this first one, I'm confused about. You have to explain this one. You think the real villain of Loki already is Nightmare?
All right,
wait, you got to refresh. Who is Nightmare?
Okay, now, first of all, this list is going in least likely to most likely before y'all roast me in the comments.
Okay.
Now, Nightmare at number 5, whatever number this turns out to be on the list. Nightmare is, in the Marvel Comics, is the king, lord of the dream dimension, especially the part of it related to fear. Like, he's the one who uses... There's a bunch of fear lords as established in Journey into Mystery by Kieran Gillen. Bunch of edgelords in Marvel. Cthulhu is one of them. This dude, Despair, Nightmare, a few other cats. This was all established in Journey into Mystery by Kieran Gillen. Journey into Mystery features Kid Loki. As you see me making these connections. So Nightmare's already been a Loki villain, right? But anyway, Nightmare's, he's this dude. He looks like a white-ass Mephisto, kind of. Like with green and white. He's green is his color, like Loki.
But Ben, you brought him up during WandaVision. And that didn't pan out, so.
And that's why I don't think it's to pan out here. But in the first episode of Loki... While Loki is being escorted through the TVA by Mobius, say it 5 times fast. Mobius Strip, Infinite. He's being escorted through the TVA and Loki's talking about burning the whole place to the ground, as Loki is wont to do. And he says, well, something about there's a division. Loki says this place is a nightmare. And dude says, well, no, that's actually another division. That place you can burn down.
Okay.
So, there we are. Our hint that the villain is Nightmare. You can now bring in the boos and the resounding, no! Because, unlikely. On to the next one.
Okay, this is the most... So, again, we're going from least likely to most likely.
Yes.
So, on to the next one, Benhameen. We both said perhaps Kang has something to do with this.
Kang!
We was Kangs. Now, the reason, and this is also perhaps due to proximity, this is very close generally speaking, to the
Mm-hmm.
news that came out a few months ago about Jonathan Majors being cast to play Kang. So
Yep.
Kang, at least for us, was pretty much at the top of mind. And there's also connections with characters that show up in the Loki Disney Plus show when you're talking about from the comic book perspective. Specifically, Google Mbatha's Raw character, Ravonna Renslayer.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in the show, Ravonna is given a completely different role and, at least at first, approach. So, at least in the show, we don't know what she has to do with Kang, if anything at all. However, in the comics, Ravonna is more or less his lover, his on again, off again lover, that they have a very contentious relationship, to say the least. It's very Maury show.
Man, is it?
It's Maury show in plus time travel, and it's pretty effed up. So
you once compared it to Mr. Freeze, but Mr. Freeze ain't got nothing on Kang and Ravonna in terms of drama.
No, this is different.
Different.
This is a different situation. I mean, to the point where, at least in the comics, there's points like first of all, Kang saw her, was like, "Ooh, that's a bad bitch. I want her," and Ravonna was like, "Nah, I ain't with that shit." And you know how what happens, right? You're like, "Oh, that man was ugly. I'm not really trying to mess with him," but he
came back
right.
in that brand new whip.
He got them stacks. You know what I'm saying? Like, he came back with a brand new whip. So you're just like, oh, maybe we could do something about it. So long story short, they end up having a little bit of something. But again, with time travel involved, there's lots of different versions of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And certain versions of themselves don't really fuck with the other. And there's points where one kills the other. Like, it's very contentious, to say the least.
Yes.
So because of that, and because of that, at least comic book connection, I'm like, bro, could potentially be one of the entryways for Kang. We know we're going to see Kang at some point in an MCU film, but hey, the TVs is also fair game.
We know we're going to see Kang as one of, if not the major villain of Ant-Man Quantumania. So he's been cast. Jonathan Majors is playing him. You got Google and playing
Google and Batara.
Playing Ravonna. So, it'd be a great matchup right there. Like, if you want to tell a love story, that's match made in heaven with those two actors.
Now, obviously, they're going to change up the horribleness of their relationship from the comics, if they even have one. But it's just something to be mentioned.
And because of that is why Kang is probably even least likely than Nightmare. They could battle it out on this spot, but we'll see what happens.
All right. Next up, I'm sorry, y'all. We gotta say it. I know y'all gonna throw y'all hands up.
I think these last three are like the play-in of the NBA tournament. Like, they have no chance, but we gotta do it for the ratings. So, here we go. Shout out to the Lakers.
Who could it be, Benhameen?
Mephisto's back, baby!
We're just gonna keep saying his name for every show, right? Like, every show. Oh, that might be Mephisto. Oh, the leaves in the tree spelled out Mephisto. Like, what? What are we doing? Oh, the Infinity Stones over there spelled out Mephisto. Like, what are we doing?
I bet somebody pauses that scene in this episode and really does something right there.
But why? But Ben, why are we doing this? Why are we bringing him up again?
Why are we bringing old Red, Big Red up yet again? Because, folks, finally, in the very first episode of Loki, we see that stained glass painting that we've been waiting to see that caused all the ruckus back in the WandaVision days, which seems so long ago now. Yes, we see the stained glass painting of a devil. There are several references to the devil doing this when they're going after who is causing all this drama and turbulence in the Loki series. Mephisto, other than that, does not get a name drop. Nightmare does. So, likelihood low. But once again, Mephisto has big dealings with Loki in the comic books. Let's go back to that Journey into the Mystery series by Kieran Gillen again, where Loki is trying to make up for what he's done before, which is a big part of, let's just lay it on the table right here, the Loki series that we see. As you know, as we talked about earlier, this is not the same Loki that we knew before. And so one of the big things Loki is trying to do is trying to outlive the idea of being a villain, and being a part of someone else's story and being the villain in that story. Loki doesn't want to play that role anymore. Loki probably never even realized he was playing that role until now. This Loki is actually a different, like you said, it's a different Loki that we've ever seen. So the knowledge this Loki gains makes him a different character than even the Loki of, that we're used to. It's just different dudes. And so because of that, he's trying to figure out who he is. He doesn't want to play the role in the story. He doesn't want to be the villain, which is the same journey that Kid Loki was going on in Journey into Mystery, where he had all these dealings with Mephisto, and Mephisto and Loki go back like, rice and peas.
Got it.
So,
okay.
Still, probably not.
Okay. But then that brings us to the next person, who is Loki himself. I mean, that would be the most obvious one, right?
Or herself, their self.
Or their self, exactly. Because as we know, and this was actually technically already canon because it was said by Odin himself. But as we know by the I guess those teaser pictures that have been thrown out there, and it was really like Loki's booking information when he gets arrested by the TVA. It says his gender is gender fluid. And that tracks right along with how he is in the comics, because he does present himself, or they, if he goes by the they pronoun, present themselves or can present themselves at both male or female or whatever of his choosing. In this case, I'm just going to say he, because we're talking about Guy Loki. But the fact that he can be both, and that's what Odin calls him, my child who is both. So as we see, or will see with this series, we're going to see Loki throughout, I presume, thousands of years, and who knows how many different variants of him. So this would naturally include the potential introduction of Lady Loki.
This would definitely include the potential introduction, blah, 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 of Lady Loki and a few other Lokis. In the very first episode, you see several variants. All of them are male. One of them might be Hulk Loki. I'm not 100% sure. There's going to be a lot of version thought.
I wonder if we're going to see Kid Loki, like you mentioned. And also,
God, please, God.
Also, because, again, essentially infinite number of variations depending on how many timelines he runs through. Like, I know, like, when, like, there was a still shot of that. Do you remember when they said, oh, you broke the timeline? And you see that line start branching off? There's about 13 branches. So
yes,
we can see that, or an infinite. I mean, technically time is just, it's not measurable, right? So it can be anything. And so I'm thinking, like, on the vein of, what if you get to see a Loki that's like real timid and real like nice and this and that, or would you see a Loki that's just like hellfire and brimstone? And then of course we'll see like potentially Lady Loki, Kid Loki, and whatever variants thereof.
Yes. And I'm pretty sure with, my crystal ball and having seen a little bit more, I will guarantee a lot of that. I'll hit the guarantee button like Charles Barkley on that one.
But because
as far as being the villain,
because of the obvious nature of that, like I think also what this show is going to end up being is just another journey through Loki characterization. Like, again, different type of Loki, but just the fact that this could be shaping out to be another redemption of Loki as a character. Maybe we fall in love with this version because of what the trials and tribulation he's going to end up going through. Maybe he learns and grows as a god / person / whatever. Like, I just think that we're going to see a lot of that happen. So in the end, once again, I think we're still going to end up with someone. I don't think we're going to end up with somebody we hate. I just don't see this being us at the end of 6 episodes. We're like, oh, I never really fucked with that version of Loki. Like, I don't see it. Like, the character is too beloved. The reception of Tom Hiddleston is too positive and powerful. And also he's a good actor, right? So even if he does fuck shit, we probably would still fuck with him. So I just don't see him. And also because of your explanation, Ben, that you've given on Views from the 616 of what it means to be a quote unquote villain, I just don't see him being the villain.
I don't either. And I think that longtime listeners of Views from the 616 will definitely have a lot to say about everything that I've said about villains, because I think this series is going to examine what it means to be the villain. I mean, in the very first episode, there's so much that we'll get into later on the main episode, which you can find on Monday, where we'll talk about the themes and everything and about villainy and what it means to be a villain and playing a role in someone else's story when you think that you're the star of your own story. Woo, there's a lot with
Everybody,
this.
I mean, it's a joke that's out, but like everyone sometimes feels like they're the main character until you're not.
Until you're not.
You walk around like, oh yeah, everybody's looking at me. Like everyone has these main character moments, right? Like for
So,
example, I do. For example, when I'm in a movie theater and if I have to, like everyone's seated and I have to leave to go to the bathroom, like before the movie starts, I feel like people are looking at me. Now, it could just be clearly my imagination, but I get main character syndrome from that. And sometimes you get that, like your hair got freshly twisted, bend, you looking fresh to death, and you walking down the street and you swear everybody's breaking their necks to look at you. Before we know, no one's paying you no mind. We don't know, but the point is that idea that, like you said, like is are you a player in a larger story? Are you a player in your own story? And then also, how does your actions change and shape or not the future? And even your own personal timeline.
these are all bigger and badder questions that we will get into. But we got one more person on this list because it probably ain't Loki or Variant. I doubt it. I go with you. The character Tom Hiddleston and the character and other actors they have cast, and the idea that's been floating around that Loki season 2 is already happening.
Wow.
Seems like nah. So who's last on the list?
Last on the list, and who I really think is actually a group of people.
Me too.
The TVA themselves. Now, I say this because just off top, the TVA is the cops fuck 12. That's how I feel. Case closed, right? No, but honestly, okay, so TVA stands for Time Variance Authority, right? And we know them as this group that is responsible for maintaining order of the timeline, meaning making sure that no just ridiculous happenings go on. And if this was the case, where were they with the whole Thanos situation? But making sure that nothing changes within the fated timeline, if you will. I have several questions about what that even really means.
Well,
like for one, who put them in charge of the timeline? Because I know from the comics, there's actually several different groups who swear up and down they're in charge, including Kang and Kang's peoples. And I'm just like, so who, like, what's the truth? Like, who's really responsible? And is these people just taking it upon themselves because they feel like they should hold the power? And then two, who are they to say what is the correct fated timeline or whatever it is? Like what is their power? The sacred timeline. Okay, yes. So explain that to me.
Okay. Well, as revealed in the first episode of Loki, the TVA was created by the Time Lords, 3 space lizards, as Loki refers to them, who have been dealing with time since the beginning of time, are great beings of power, and went through a big battle, et cetera, to make everything in this one orderly timeline because there was a chaos of multiverses happening.
It was a time war?
It was a time war, basically. So they put it into one orderly, sacred timeline where they will not allow things like deviance and anything else to disrupt this sacred timeline. Now, people immediately are going to ask, like we are asking, where was y'all at when Thanos was doing all that?
Right. And or is that part of the sacred timeline?
There it is. Hold on, let me. There it is. Like you answered your own question. That is part of the sacred timeline to them.
But this is my problem.
Well, we'll get into that and we'll see if they are the main villains. But their belief is that it's sacred timeline. What they don't believe is Loki escaping with the Tesseract. Now, that's not part of the sacred timeline. Now, why is that not? They say the Avengers should win. They say that Loki is always the villain. That's your role in story is to make the other dudes better.
Oh.
So they are a very, in my eyes, fascist organization. And I also have questions because I got very big Emperor of Warhammer 40K vibes off of them. If y'all know about Warhammer 40K, it's basically this big old dead dude who rules humanity, and everybody thinks he's alive. He sits on his throne. They're not sure if he's alive or dead. And they're like, well, whatever the Emperor wills has to be. And that's basically what these Time Lords are doing. They're saying whatever they do, we don't get to see them yet. It just seems like this big ass bureaucracy of people who are just, department upon department. This shit is huge. It's dwarfing anything we've seen in the Marvel Universe. Shield looks like, your Sunday school organization right now. It's something insane. And how can they, like Loki says, determine the fate of trillions?
And then say, like, okay, well, the whole snap thing, oh, that's part of the sacred time. So, and that's what this one, I just feel is hypocritical because, like, they're coming at Loki for supposedly doing something that's not part of the sacred timeline, and it can I assume, endanger so many. But what was the snap then?
What was everything that happens? If they're omnipotent gods, why do bad things happen in the world?
Right, and that's another question for the Eternals that we'll get to another time. But but that's my problem. Like, again, that's what I'm not trusting. I don't. Something's not clean in the milk when it comes to the TVA, and also just the fact that they do give off the fascist vibes, and the fact that they're so bureaucratic. They're so very cut and dry, by the book, stuffy tie, and I'd never trust that. It feels devoid of color and rhythm and love, and understandable that if you are of that type of being where these humanistic concepts don't really matter, like even our humans' rudimentary understanding of time is just, as you say, child's play or trash. It's just like, damn, but then the same person is telling me what's right and wrong. I don't subscribe to that.
And even Owen Wilson's character, Mobius, makes a point in the first episode where he's talking about how it's not about approval or disapproval. It's more about, like, he's like, well, they approve this and they disapprove that to the sacred timeline. And he's like, well, it's more about, and then we don't get to find out what it's about. But like you said, if they're not humanistic, if they are reptilian beings who don't even have the same feelings that we do, how could they relate to our, petty little desires? But, half of the universe getting snapped out of existence seems like more than a petty desire to me. So.
And then also, it's also giving me very much, well, if it don't bother me, it don't, I don't care. Because my thing is, you can also say, well, since they exist in a different space than everybody else, the snap never bothered them. Like the snap had never affected them.
Who knows? And all questions that hopefully will be answered. But for now, I think the TVA is ranking number one, numero uno, on our list of who is the real villain of Loki.
Definitely.
Yes.
So unless you have any other people you want to throw in there, I think we're going to let everyone deliberate on that and tell us what you think. I know people who are listening to this are just probably either yelling about the whole Mephisto thing, or maybe you have some different name that we didn't even think about. So make sure you do a few things. Make sure you're following us at For All Nerds on all social platforms. You can also email us, contact@forallnerds.com, if you want to discuss it with us, have a chat, things like that. Maybe we'll discuss it on the main show. Maybe we'll mention you on the next episode of Views from the 616 this coming Monday. In the meantime, we also want to make sure that you are subscribed to Views from the 616 on your favorite podcast platform. You do that by subscribing to For All Nerds. We are on every podcast platform you can probably imagine, such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and all the things in between. Make sure as well that to get prepared for our full review that you got your Views from the 616 merch. DJ Benhameen has one of the beautiful sketch Sawyer designs. That's actually a Mohawk on a motorbike. That is exclusive to For All Nerds, meaning you can't get that design anywhere else, as well as this For All Nerds tee that I'm wearing. And as I mentioned, the Views from the 616 design, you can get those at our TeePublic store, teepublic.com/stores/forallnerds. Everything you do when it comes to supporting us goes right back into the podcast. It helps us pay our group, our team in the background that's making us sound and look beautiful. Thank you very much to Luna and Chica. We love you. And it helps to bring more content. Shout out to Uncolored Page, who does our Twitch streams. And speaking of Twitch, make sure you're following us on Twitch, twitch.tv/forallnerds. And that way you can join the live streams when we go live each and every Monday for our Loki reviews. And what else, Ben? I mean, what I missed? Make sure you're following us. I'm at Tatiana King.
And I'm at DJ Benhameen. And make sure you come back right here to wherever you're watching this on Monday, every Monday, for our Views from the 616 review of Loki. Episode 1 drops this Monday.